Today is Friday, August 1st, 2025. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. Debate rages over Gaza starvation claims. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating. You can email us as well, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. We're glad you're here with us as we're getting through the news of the day each and every weekday, bright and early, right here. Joining me today, CBN's Trey Goins-Phillips. Trey, on the focus story, a bit of positive news. We got a record-breaking Preemie.
Yeah, so he just celebrated his first birthday. He's a Guinness World Record holder for the earliest delivered Preemie. Pretty incredible story.
All right, looking forward to an uplifting story here on a Friday edition of the Quick Start podcast. On the main thing, more Muslims are converting after reportedly seeing Jesus in dreams. George Thomas has the story coming up on the main thing. Make sure you subscribe to all of our CBN News podcasts. You can find the links to those right there in the description, as we have each and every day. And don't forget to check out our Substack, substack.com/faithwire, and you can pray along with us as we post the news stories that are going on that need prayer, and like-minded people are joining up, and we're praying together for the news of the day, the things going on around the world. Make sure you're part of that on Substack. All right, with that, we are going to head to the news now in 90 seconds. The Children's Hospital of Richmond, Virginia, VCU, has officially stopped all sex change surgeries and puberty blocker treatments for those under 19, citing new federal policy and growing medical concerns. The move comes after President Trump's executive order threatened to pull funding from hospitals that perform irreversible gender procedures on children, calling them destructive and life-altering. VCU initially paused the treatments in January after a warning from the Virginia Attorney General, who said such practices pose legal and financial risks and endanger vulnerable youth. And world leaders and aid groups are scrambling to respond to Gaza's worsening humanitarian crisis, but they disagree sharply on its root causes. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected UN claims of starvation and a starvation campaign, calling them a bold-faced lie, and insisted Israel has supplied nearly 2 million tons of food since the war began. He blamed Hamas for intercepting aid and diverting supplies. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee are set to fly into Gaza today to inspect food distribution sites. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can check out more stories over at cbnnews.com. And I mean, Trey, this story, I mean, it's quite interesting to watch, because the main purveyor of the claims that there's mass starvation happening end up being either the UN or the Gaza Health Ministry. And you can't trust either one of them as far as you can throw them. Number one, we know the Gaza Health Ministry is Hamas, essentially. And we also know that the UN essentially took part in October 7th. I mean, we saw how many people were actually working for the UN who were terrorists on that day. I mean, it's remarkable that then we go to the UN, we go to the Gaza Health Ministry, and we listen to the claims that they're making. Now, of course, it's war and there are going to be hard things happening there, but to sit there and say and cite the evidence of the enemy is, especially when that enemy are terrorists who are bent on killing innocent people, it's very difficult to take those claims seriously. But on the other hand, you know, when there's suffering, of course, we want to take care of that and we want to do the best we can with that. But the claims are flying around on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, suffering for sure is not a good thing. And that's why there are so many, by the way, NGOs that are working to meet the needs of the people of Gaza, to kind of fill that gap for those who have been, you know, they're subject to Hamas, a terrorist organization that's running their area, and nobody thinks that Hamas is doing a good job. Everybody knows that these people are just as much being terrorized as any other group of people. So now the weird thing is the bizarre decision that the governments around the world have made, and their condemnations and the media decisions, is all the onus is on Israel, right? Everything is like, well, Israel, you need to just take it when you're attacked. And then also anything that the people of Gaza are suffering from, it's your fault because you're retaliating, you're responding to the attacks. So everything is on Israel to solve. And Israel is doing actually a lot to provide for the people of Gaza. They've partnered with a lot of organizations to help the people of Gaza. They give warnings saying, hey, clear out this area. We're going to be doing X, Y, and Z. So Israel has gone out of its way to assist the people of Gaza, yet you don't hear anything about that in the media. All of it is about how, Netanyahu is wanting to create some sort of genocide in the Gaza Strip, which of course is not an accurate representation, but it's frustrating that that is the mainstream narrative.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And one thing's for sure, we can certainly be praying for this to all hopefully come to an end soon. Pray for the people of Gaza and pray that Hamas would say, you know what, we're going to return what hostages we have left. We're going to surrender. We're going to stop this fight that we started. And maybe some peace can actually happen there in the region. So we need to be praying all around for the people caught in the middle of this for sure. We're going to go to the focus story now. And as Trey said at the top here, we got this preemie baby who's celebrating 1 year from being born. So what's the story here?
Yeah, so his name is Nash Keene. He was born July 5th of 2024 to Molly and Randall Keene at the University of Iowa Health Care Center. He arrived 21 weeks into gestation, making him 133 days early. He weighed only 10 ounces, which, just for context, that's smaller than the size of a grapefruit. He was so small and born so young that he actually now officially holds the Guinness World Record for the most premature baby, not only to be born, but obviously to survive, right? He's now a year on, and he's surviving and making progress. So to hold the world record, obviously, that this is just recorded. There may be others at other times, but at least in modern history, and obviously we have a lot of medical marvels that have allowed this to even happen, right? I mean, years ago when we didn't have the kind of medical interventions we have now, slim to no chance outside of a 100% bona fide miracle that a child born and weighing just 10 ounces 133 days early would survive.
What were the challenges parents faced, and how did the first year overall go for them?
Yeah, so Molly had previously had a previous loss at 18 weeks gestation due to cervical incompetence. She also lives with PCOS, which of course complicates pregnancies. She went to a routine 20-week ultrasound, and she was informed then by her doctor, you were actually beginning to dilate, which prompted her to rush, of course, into bed rest. She was transferred then to Iowa, where they had a special center that could deal with a potential preemie baby. They knew he was going to be preemie, but they were hoping, of course, it would be much longer before Nash was born. But they delayed it as long as they could and got him right past the 21-week threshold, as I said, and that gave him access immediately, of course, once he was born, to the intensive neonatal care unit there in Iowa. And as far as his first year, it's gone really well. He's been 189 to 198, somewhere in there, days in the NICU in Iowa. He was discharged in January of this year. He celebrated his first birthday just at the beginning of last month. And he still has some minor issues that he's dealing with. He still has oxygen in his nose, and he's still being fed through a feeding tube. But he doesn't have any significant developmental, what they see as potentially long-term issues. He's actually making steady progress. And the neonatologist that's been caring for him said, we're hoping that by the time he's entering kindergarten, nobody would ever be able to tell that he was a preemie, much less one born at weighing only 10 ounces.
That's crazy. So how can we be praying for this family, this situation?
Yeah, so we actually have a post over on our Faithwire Substack, which is faithwire.substack.com, where you can go and we have kind of a description, a video of the story of the Keene family, and also a handful of prayer points. We're just praying for one, thanking the Lord for the miraculous intervention here, but also praying for continued healing for Nash. That this would be a story that would awaken hearts to the value of human life. We know the abortion battle, the pro-life battle is one that is still ongoing in the country, and it's stories like this that I think win people over to realizing actually that is a human life, and it does have innate value and dignity. And then also just for praying for boldness and sharing our testimonies, that the Keene family would be confident in sharing their faith journey and seeing how the Lord has miraculously intervened in their life, and that those testimonies would embolden all of us to share our faith.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think too about, I see so many, and my algorithm tends to show me a lot of life related videos. And I see a lot of these debates that happen on the street between people who are pro abortion and pro lifers. And it's really interesting to me at how little people on the pro abortion side of the argument have thought out the process of what's happening in the womb. They go right to it's a clump of cells, et cetera, et cetera. And you look at a story like this where a baby can be born at 10 ounces. I mean, that's if in a good case scenario, that's 20 weeks, probably 18 or 19 weeks, somewhere around that area. It's just crazy that you can sit there and say it's totally okay to abort that child. And so, hopefully another impact of this story is for people to see, wow, that is a life in the womb from way back, from way beyond, way prior to quote unquote viability, which is such an if anyone ever uses that with you in a discussion, it's such an arbitrary, pointless barometer to use to decide when life begins. It's why is it before viability and after? Why? Make them explain that, because it's just a term they throw out to try to, I don't know, get people to back down or something. And it just makes no sense. And you see a baby like this and it's just, man, you just look at the miracle that is life and you can't help but be in awe with it.
Yeah, yeah, I think stories like this kind of highlight the relativism that we live in and also the emotionalism that we live in. Because the left will say, or the pro abortion camp will say, well, it's not a baby, it's just a clump of cells. But then once it's born, once Nash was outside of the womb, all of a sudden he became a human. So it's
Right.
like,
How?
why is he a human when he's outside of the womb? By the way, much earlier than he's supposed to be, but he's not a human when he's inside his mother's womb and is just a clump of cells that can be aborted. And I think that they're preying on, well, you can't see it yet. So because you can't see it, you can't get attached. Just realize that it's just a clump of cells. But once you see that 21-week-old, 18-week-old baby and you realize, man, he's teeny, teeny, tiny, but he looks exactly like a human. It's because he is a human.
It's yes, 100%. And I'll never cease to be amazed at watching the miracle of life, the process of life happen in the womb and seeing it from the moment of conception when your DNA and the blueprint of who you are is formed. And you look at even just the cells and the inner workings of the cells. They all have the proteins and they're all going and moving in different directions and doing jobs. It's so incredible to see not only the complexity, but the purpose, the clear purpose and design in all of that. The closer we look, the more incredible it gets. And this is just one of those stories that gets me thinking down that road. And hopefully, Trey, it'll get more people thinking that way as well. Final thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think this is such an important story, as I said when I was talking about ways we can pray, is because as Christians, I mean, the Bible is full of testimonies, and this is just another testimony that emboldens our faith and encourages us and reminds us that, man, God is still active and working and sovereign in all of our lives, and this is just a glimpse of God's sovereignty over little Nash's life. So we're just praying that he comes to Christ and just becomes a champion for the faith.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great story. And appreciate you bringing it to us on the podcast today. All right. We are going to go to the main thing now. And George Thomas, takes us inside the hidden revival happening in ancient Bukhara, where dreams of Jesus are changing people's lives. That's today's main thing.
Beginning in China, the ancient Silk Road stretched over 4,000 miles, cutting through today's Central Asia, the Middle East, and all the way to southern Europe. Sitting at the crossroads of this legendary route was the city of Bukhara, in what is now Uzbekistan. And not just goods like silk and spices passed through here. This was a place where ideas, cultures, and religions collided and thrived. A vibrant hub in the heart of Central Asia.
Bukhara is an amazing city, beautiful people. It's a very historical place, over 2,000 years old, and is very important to our people.
Uzbekistan, once part of the former Soviet Union, shares borders with Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. Islam is deeply rooted here, woven into the nation's identity and culture. At the spiritual heart of the country lies Bukhara, long considered the most significant Islamic city in Central Asia. It's also home to the region's oldest mosque.
Historically, Bukhara served as a major center for the spread of Islam all throughout Central Asia through its various religious schools known as madrasas and its majestic mosques, drawing students from around the world.
While Islam is the dominant faith here, a tiny fraction of the population, less than 0.3%, is evangelical Christian.
In Uzbekistan, it's difficult to provide systematic education for Christian leaders of any denomination. However, in recent years, thanks to the current government in Uzbekistan, we've seen a noticeable openness, significant progress and potential.
Rakuba's organization, Mission Eurasia, has been training and equipping a new generation of Uzbek Christian leaders through a unique education program.
School Without Walls is an informal approach to education. We don't have classrooms, we don't have registration lists, we don't have certificates or academic scholars. What we do have is a living faith, deep experience, strong desire, and a growing number of young Christians, future leaders, who are eager to be trained, equipped to gain missiological strategic ideas for how to reach their nation for Jesus.
Last year, Mission Eurasia brought hundreds of passionate young Christian professionals here, committed to making a difference in their communities. Igor Popov with the Bible Society of Uzbekistan sees this all as part of a larger shift.
We are experiencing amazing changes today in Uzbekistan, and it all started several years ago with the new government.
In 2016, Uzbeks went to the polls and elected President Shafkat. And since then, he has modernized this entire country. In fact, here in the capital city, this is known as the New Tashkent. Christians of this country also credit him for bringing greater religious freedom.
Dr. Ruman Soy, a local doctor and pastor, says Shafkat's reforms led to more churches receiving legal permits than ever before.
Today, many Uzbeks are open to hearing about Jesus. They have open hearts. They want to read the Word of God. They are asking us to pray for them. They ask us to visit them in their homes.
Worship pastor Likov Oleg leads 3 small house churches in Bukhara. He says music has been key to their growth.
We are witnessing how God is miraculously touching people's lives. We get invited into their homes. We sit on the floor, have tea, share a meal. Then we start singing and explaining how Jesus touched our lives. Muslims then open up and tell us how they have seen Jesus in their dreams. One person told me, "I didn't know who Jesus was, but I saw him in my dream. He showed me his hands, and I saw the nail-pierced prints of his palms and his feet. And he said, 'Come to me.'"
Iskander leads another house church here in Bukhara.
There are miracles of healing happening. When we lay hands on people, the Lord heals them. And we are very thankful for his powerful move.
Pastor Timur Hakimov works closely with Mission Eurasia to disciple new Christian converts.
Through this partnership, we teach new believers how to incorporate biblical principles in all areas of their lives. For example, how to raise a godly family, how to be a good father, a good mother, a godly husband, and to raise godly children.
In the mountains outside the capital, we visited a house church where believers walk miles across rugged terrain just to break bread and fellowship together.
In our gatherings, we have Uzbek, Kazakhs, Karakalpak, Tajik, Russians, South Koreans, and other nationalities. Lately, through the School Without Walls initiative, we've been emphasizing more on evangelism and reaching young people, and the church is growing.
In a nation rooted in centuries of Islamic tradition, pastors here tell us that a quiet shift is underway, one house church at a time. For the believers here, it marks the start of a new chapter, one unfolding along the ancient path of the storied Silk Road. George Thomas, CBN News, Bukhara, Uzbekistan.
All right, George, appreciate that report there very much. And that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing.
We are looking at Colossians 3:17 today. It says, "Whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him."
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just one of those reminders that everything we have, every situation in life, every circumstance, it's all through him. And so that's how we have to be thinking when we're responding to these things, when we're going forward in life, just always keeping him first and foremost in mind. All right, that's where we're going to leave it on this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. As always, get on over to cbnnews.faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. We'll see you back here on Monday.